Where exactly have you been?
I want everyone to take a bucket and start rattling. This is for the miners.
Miners? We agreed on a banner, Mark.
It's a show of solidarity. Who hates the miners? Thatcher. Who else? The police, the public, and the tabloid press. It sounds familiar?
Surely,
But
Mark.
the only problem we've got that they haven't is Mary Whitehouse, and that can only be a matter of time.
Mark.
I know it's not been planned, it's not been thought through, but it's a really good idea, isn't it? Isn't it?
What am I supposed to do with this?
Give it to the lesbians. They love a banner.
Oh, for God's sake. Right, looks like you're off the up, mate. Good lad. Whatever Mark says, we do it. Don't ask me why.
Welcome to Kermode Uncut. I want to ask you a question about whether or not the politics of a movie are more or less important than whether the movie itself is any good. As you probably know, Pride is currently doing really well in UK cinemas. Audiences are loving it. I saw it last week, reviewed it last week. I thought it was terrific. And I said in my review that as somebody who was a big old lefty in the 1980s, very, very involved in student politics around the time of the miners' strike, that the film had me at hello, because basically it's a story about diverse groups of people, you know, out and proud gay Londoners and Welsh miners coming together against a common enemy, in this particular case, the Thatcher government. So I loved the politics anyway, but more importantly, I loved the film. I thought the performances were great. I thought Paddy Considine was terrific. I thought Bill Nighy was wonderfully understated. Imelda Staunton was really, really funny.
Lesbian, are you, love?
That's right. We're just off to Swansea now for a massive layers off.
And I loved the soundtrack. There was very little about the film I didn't like, although I could see that some people might not love it. Now, turns out that some critics didn't just not love it, they absolutely hated it. There was a review last week in the Financial Times by Nigel Andrews, and it's a very, very good review. I disagree with almost every word of it, but he didn't like the film, and one of the reasons he didn't like it was the politics. He says, nothing in modern history is more amazing than the cultural rebranding of the UK miners' strike as a heroic crusade, rather than a Luddite last stand for inter alia, union demagoguery, greenhouse gas and emphysema. And he then goes on to talk about the fact that he hated the film, not least because of the way that it, for him, rewrites the politics of the 1980s. And this got me thinking about whether or not you can love a film but disagree with its politics. When Michael Bay's recent Transformers movie came out, there was a piece that did the rounds online saying, you know, the problem with this film is that it basically sucks up to the Chinese government. It criticises the American government, but it plays very, very easy with the Chinese government because they've given it all these benefits and it needs to play well in that area, and that's what's wrong with it. No, you know what's wrong with that Transformers movie? Like all the other Transformers movies, they're not any good. When I was reviewing Sex and the City 2, I did indeed describe it as consumerist pornography, and I started singing the Internationale in the middle of my review. I hate the politics of that film, but what I hate more is the fact that as a film, it's no good at all. It's not funny, it's not interesting, it's not engaging, it's unbelievably boring. You look back into the history of cinema, look at film critics tying themselves up in knots, trying to explain why it is that Birth of a Nation is really important in terms of cinema, but its politics are utterly abhorrent. Look at the way in which people have attempted to deal or not deal with the filmmaking of Leni Riefenstahl. Can you separate the style from the content? And then I was thinking about films like Top Gun. I remember interviewing Tim Robbins, who's in Top Gun, and said, look, that film is basically an advert for the American Air Force, for the American Navy, for the American Army. It's an advert for American militarism. I still kind of like it, in the same way that I've got a terrible soft spot for the Richard Gere film An Officer and a Gentleman. I don't agree with anything that film says politically, but I like the movie. So my question to you is this: can you think of an example of a movie that you really love, even though you really hate what it says politically?